I love to cook at home, and having good kitchenware makes all the difference in the world. Not only does good equipment make prep and cooking easier, but it makes it more enjoyable. This is why I am a huge fan of Made in Cookware. Their wide range of cookware, from pots and pans to knives and flatware and even glassware, are designed to be professional quality for right in your home. I myself have over a dozen pieces from Made in, including pots, pans, pizza steel, knives, and a beer glass. Yeah, beer glassware. They have that all. Take your cooking to the next level by upgrading your cookware by going to unitedwedrink.com/madein. That's MADEIN. Find out why pros like Grant Achatz, Sean Brock, Nancy Silverton, and Eric Repair trust Made In. Go to unitedwedrink.com/madein and upgrade your kitchen and cooking today. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the United We Drink podcast right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich. I'm a little jet lagged, and that's okay. But with me, as always, is a man who is a officer and a gentleman, Kevin Abbott.
Mike, it's really nice to have you back in the state. We've missed you.
Oh, I did not miss it. Being smacked in the face by the humidity the moment that I stepped off the plane, it was like, yep.
Back in
Here we
Florida.
go. Yep. So how are you doing, Kevin? I know while I was away, we had a little bit of a wager. We talked about this before the show, but I want to put it out in the public. A baseball wager. My Phillies played your Tigers. We bet a bottle of whiskey on it, and we swept you.
Well, let me first say this. I knew the Phillies were going to win this series. I thought it might be a little more competitive. Like maybe it would go down to the third game and the Phillies would win, right? It would be, a 3-1. The Tigers, I think you brought the stat, but that's the way it felt, is that the Tigers struggled to get a hit before the fifth or sixth inning in each game. It was barely competitive in any way, shape, or form. I didn't think it would be that bad. I knew I was buying you a bottle of whiskey. I really just wanted to give you a present, and I thought this was a creative way to do so. So no one please think that I thought the Tigers were going to win that series, but I do love my Tigers. I do follow them every day, and I like doing little wagers and bets here and there, and it's rare I get a chance to do that.
Let's just say that you bought me an early halfway to my birthday present.
Yeah, and thankfully, my wife has promised she will not divorce me because of my terrible gambling habit of one $50 bottle of whiskey a year. So I think we'll be good.
You got a good lady there, Kevin.
Yeah, she's very supportive of my problems.
If you need help,
as I take a drink of beer. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you need help and have a gambling problem, call number. It's like always on the bottom of the DraftKings commercials.
You can put that in post.
Yes, I will. No, I won't. Kevin, what are you drinking this evening?
Well, I've got a couple things here. I've got one of the Lazy Dog beer clubs from the last batch. The new one's coming out, I think, in a couple weeks, but this is from Figueroa Mountain. It is a cryo hop New Zealand style pale ale. So I'm drinking that, and this is my second can of this. This is a solid beer. I love the beers from Lazy Dog, and I'm very excited about our beer coming up with them. And then I've got this little gem, Michael. Bourbon Barrel Old Rasputin.
Whoa!
This is the 25th version of it because they do the Roman numerals on here, And I did this for Old Favorite Friday. It'll be out this next Friday. Well, actually, it'll be out by the time I guess when this recording comes out, it will be coming out in a day. And I was walking through Total Wine and More. I love this beer with a passion undying. I basically just giddily fawned over it the entire time we were talking about this with Ralph. This is just such a perfect beer. It really is one of the best bourbon barrel beers out there, and still stands heads and shoulders above pretty much every bourbon barrel imperial stout, in my opinion. It's just perfect.
I haven't had one of those in quite a number of years, but always do remember enjoying them. Do they have like 4 packs of 12-ounce bottles now?
4 packs, yep.
How much was a 4 pack?
I think it was 18 or 20, I think it was. I bought a couple different things at that time, so I could be mistaken when it comes to that, but it wasn't 30. It was I thought it was reasonable. I loved seeing this beer, and I try to get that beer every time I see it, and I just haven't seen it in quite a while. I don't know if it hadn't come down last year or what, but here it is, and I'm a happy guy.
According to Total Wine's website, it's $19.50. So
Okay.
that's still a really good deal for a 4 pack of bottles of that. Because I feel like I remember back in the day, it was like a really fancy looking like 500 ml bottle or something like that.
Yeah, beautiful wine label style. That, and I remember the old stock. They did a barrel aged version of Old Stock, which was just freaking killer. Another beer I'm trying to track down. I've been going on websites recently to see if I can get any beer, because there's so many beers that I come up with that I want to do for the Old Favorite Friday. I want to feature, and so few of them now are here in Florida, and more breweries and more classic legacy brands are unavailable here. And I found a couple websites, but they seem kind of shady. They're the kind of thing where like you send it in and they just send you like a 6-pack of Budweiser and they're like, yeah, cool. So I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but there's a bunch of them in my on my wants there that I just can't get anymore.
Oh, okay. I myself, since we are recording on a Monday, Mondays are a dry day for me. I'm drinking an NA beer. I'm having Sam Adams Just the Haze, their NA hazy IPA. I like this one. I've had it before, and it is the only like decent tasting NA beer at my local Publix. So it's what I get there. The Guinness I have to get at Whole Foods, and the athletic stuff I have to get at like Whole Foods or Total Wine, because neither of the Publixes around me have them. But this is a nice NA beer. I enjoyed this one a lot.
Listen, on your recommendation, I've been getting on the NA train a lot, and especially just going to parties and stuff and just making like every other beer an NA, or switching to NA at a certain time of the night, and it's great. I'm really enjoying it, and there's so many great options out there. I do want to talk about that beer at some point, but I think we should save it for doing like a whole NA episode, because I think there's a lot of cool things to talk about there. Yeah,
for sure. Before we get into the actual topic, and I guess it might be a little bit relevant, I just read today that Anchor Brewing is pulling back all of its distribution to just California. Another old school legacy brand that is owned by a big beer company, Sapporo. I forgot that Sapporo even owned that company.
Yeah.
But apparently, like, they only sold about 23% of all of their sales outside of the state of California. So it's not a huge chunk that is going away, but that's pretty big news.
It's huge for us. It's huge for me. If I can't get a beer that I just found out that they had Anchor Porter available at my local Total Wine and More, and I picked it up on multiple occasions because I love that beer and I really enjoy. I like Anchor's lineup. I think they make really, really good beer, and I featured those, that and the steam ale on my Old Favorite Friday. Like I saw that as well. And in preparation for this episode and talking about just like the changing craft beer market and just the fact that these legacy brands that have been around forever that people just kind of assume are going to be there, they're making giant changes in their portfolios, dropping brands that were once the engine that drove the company, and in some places abandoning all the distribution outside of their home state. I mean, I think it's one of those deals where it's bigger than we realize it. And I think it has ripple effects, and it says a lot for the health of craft overall.
Yeah. Also tucked into that story, it said that they will not be making Christmas ale this year.
Yeah.
For the first time in like 30 years or something like that. So yeah, the main thing we wanted to talk about is really the decline in craft, the death of craft, maybe even using hyperbole on this. Interesting thing is that I wrote kind of a piece about this on my Substack, so plug right there. A few weeks back after CBC, when Bob Pease, the president of the Brewers Association, came out and said, after Bart Watson gave all of this doom and gloom like statistics, like he said, craft's best days are ahead of them. Really? From the Brewers Association, who this isn't a thing about the Brewers Association, so I'll hold some of my comments on them till we do an episode bashing them. But craft sales have been stagnant for years. Beer sales overall are down, and we as a industry are trying to find out what can we do to make our companies stable and working and pay people and keep on going. We don't really know, I guess.
That comment seems a little bit like the captain standing on the deck of the Titanic as it's going below the waves, going, "The Titanic's best days are ahead of us." I there's always an ebb and flow of these things, and when we joked around about the idea, like this episode's called "Is Craft Beer Dead?" Yes, of course, there's hyperbole, and there are going to be record profits for 50 breweries this year, right? Of people that acquired other breweries, and they got new products going out, and they're rocking and rolling, and everything's great. But what drove this conversation originally was the big news about Constellation Brands, and specifically Funky Buddha, because we're in the home state of Florida, and I just happen to used to be a brewer there, and we know the owners pretty well. The fact that they were reacquired, and basically Constellation Brands shed its craft portfolio, and we all know about the disaster that was Ballast Point. But when you're looking at Sapporo, a big beer brand, saying, well, my craft brand is no longer going to be distributed outside of my state, and you're looking at Constellation going, we can't make money in the craft world. What does that say about the real big dollars, right, about what craft beer can bring to you? It might not say much about whether your hazy IPA is good, and it might not say much about how many pastry stouts you can sell out of your tap room. But as far as an investment from companies that's what they're there to do is make money, they are not seeing the value in craft brands. And if that's the case, a lot of people who I had a conversation with somebody, it was 6 months ago, let's say, and they were a fellow craft brewer, and they were having a conversation, and they were looking for some partners in their brewery. And they mentioned, like everybody, what we want to do is get big and sell out, right? We want to get big and get bought out, and that has been the mentality, for better or for worse, not everybody, but a majority of people in the craft beer space. We want to get big, and we want to sell to AB InBev. We want to sell to Sapporo. We want to sell to Duvel Morgat. We want to sell to Canarchy now, Monster. I don't know in the next 10 to 15 years who's going to be taking a chance on those brands when it's been so unsuccessful, it seems, for so many of these people.
Yeah. as you said, Buddha was shed. They also shed Four Corners, another
Mhm.
craft brewery that they own, and now are completely divested of craft. AB sold back Appalachian Mountain Brewery, which was a, CBC or CBA brand that they acquired when they bought all of CBA a few years back. And then they shut down Platform, which was their most recent acquisition in, I think it was like 2018, 2019, from Ohio. They just shut the whole operation down, said, we're not making beer anymore for them.
No, it's shocking. I mean, it's not where most people thought this was going. Most people thought that these big brands would buy these things up and make them coast to coast, international, massive brands. And for many reasons, and we can speculate on what those are, and the fact that maybe somebody from Washington State didn't really care that much about a Florida brand like Funky Buddha, even with all the street cred and even with Maple Bacon Coffee Porter and all that. They've got other things. And maybe they didn't want to drink that beer because they knew it was bought by Constellation. We don't know. We don't know all the ins and outs of that. Maybe there's just too much competition and there's just no way to gobble up that kind of. Maybe the next Sierra Nevada or Dogfish Head or Boston Beer, maybe that's just not possible at this point.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think that there was probably a lot of overestimation on how much this stuff could grow. And this kind of goes back to the episode where we talked about who the fuck are we selling to. And we thought for the longest time that we could convert certain people into beer drinkers, and we were just dead wrong about so many of those segments. And AB were like, oh, we got to get in while the getting's hot. And like, oh, fuck. Well, they can do so much, because as being AB, they could take a brand like Goose and pretty much push IPA all around, and that's what they did. Like, it was in practically every stadium, every grocery store. Like, I mean, I can still find I don't know if it's IPA, but Bear Hug, like a hazy IPA from Goose, in all of the grocery stores around here. So they've gotten some mileage and some sales out of some of these brands, even in locations where it's not the home base. But man, I think they really expected to do a lot more, just because people were like, craft, we're into trying different things. And then it got to be, I'm kind of burnt out on this whole craft thing. I'm not gonna buy the beer from California anymore. I'm just gonna buy the one that I always enjoy from here. And I think a lot of that happened.
Listen, if we want to go down through like the post-mortem of this and look at all the possible reasons. I mean, you have quality reasons. There have been, right or wrong. I mean, the hard thing is that we're not in those breweries. We don't know what how the recipes quote unquote changed. We don't know if they were buying cheaper malts. We don't know if any of these things were happening in these multiple locations where these beers are being made now. But there is a perception, right or wrong, that the quality has gone down with the purchase from Constellation of Funky Buddha. I hear it all the time. Oh, since Constellation brought them, the hop gun's not as good. And is the hop gun exactly the same as it was before? Possibly. Are people thinking of it differently because they know they got bought out by what everyone would say is they got bought by Corona, which is not the case, but that was the perception. Is that part of it? I'm sure it's part of it. Is it the fact that people are protective of their own beer market? Sure. You mentioned Goose Island, which is a really good example of a brand that has been pretty successful, it seems. I don't know what the financials are by any shape or form, but I also know that Goose is, in our market, kind of getting their ass kicked right now. They're not doing nearly as well as they were doing before because they filled a lot of crafty spaces in chains and places like that just wanted to work with the bud houses. And now they're getting kind of pushed out for more of the local places that are taking on a little bit more craft. And is there an ebb and flow to that? Of course there is. But could Goose in 5 or 6 years be a brand that they just discontinue? I don't think it's improbable.
Yeah. Yeah, because the same goes for that brand probably as with when talking about Buddha is like you still get people who love the Bourbon County stuff, and I got to try some of the specialty ones this past year, and they were fantastic, fantastic. And but like those, despite being such a widely distributed thing too, that's not like I don't think that AB will look at it as these are keeping the lights on for that brand.
Yeah, it's just there's different equations, and we like to think that we're all in the same business because we're all making beer. And the fact of the matter is that even before the sale to Constellation, Funky Buddha and my brewery, Barrel of Monks, were not in the same business. We both made beer, very different businesses, different business model, different breakdown of package, selling to different kind of customers in different chains. And then when you get up to that next level of what they're talking about with Constellation and Bud and Miller Houses and Sapporo and that's a different business as well. And I think as a person who claims to be somewhat of an expert in this field, I have to just wonder about what it looks like to be making decisions at AB, because that's just it. You might as well be making widgets. I mean, it's not. I can't even equate what the hell they're talking about or what their earnings they're looking at and what the potential earnings they're looking at with the brand and what they're thinking about doing it and the kind of distribution network necessary. It's insane.
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm not one of the people who has to worry about that.
I think I would. You'd have to imagine you'd get used to it and you'd learn the ropes. But on the surface, I feel like I'd have a conniption fit and just kind of drool on the floor for a while because that seems very, very overwhelming.
Yeah.
The last time I went to Funky for the collaboration beer we did, Ryan was nice enough to show me around at this massive warehouse and just their operation, and I was in awe of it. I was like, how do you do this? How do you run a place like this? Because it just seems overwhelming. And he said, hey, listen, it grew. It's not that much different. And Phil has said that before when I've talked with him about distribution after he went back to Cigar City and was talking about it's just an order of magnitude. It's the same thing, but it's just tweaked slightly. So maybe it's not quite that different, but it sure as hell feels that way.
Oh yeah, stuff like that is extremely intimidating, and I haven't been to Buddha since for a number of years, but I can imagine what that initial big brewery's size was, and thinking about how much bigger it is than that just blows my mind, and the scaling up, and yeah, my mind's just telling me, holy fuck, how do you deal with that?
Run.
Yeah.
Get away from this as quickly as possible. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And I'm interested in knowing from you, like, what is your speculation? I mean, if you were a gambling man other than on bottles of whiskey on the Phillies with me, with your buddy Kevin, if you were a gambling man, 10 years from now, are you seeing this like an evisceration of the segment? Are you seeing big brands saying, well, it didn't work 5 years ago, but we'll double down and buy X, Y, and Z breweries soon? Do you think it's going to come back quickly, or you think it's going to be a long-term lull before we see something like that again?
I don't know if we'll ever see that again. Personally, I think what we're going to see over the next few years is consolidation of brands. We're already seeing some of it. Number of months ago, I think I mentioned on the show, but I know we talked about it, is Drake's Brewing buying Bear Republic's IP. Didn't buy any of the brewery or brew pubs that they had, but bought the IP and has started making Racer 5 at their East Bay brewery. I just went to one of Drake's tap rooms over the weekend and saw Racer 5 on tap. at there. So, um, just a few weeks ago, Flying Fish Brewing out of New Jersey was bought by Cape May, another brewery in the state of New Jersey, who's been a big growth brewery over the last few years. Duclaw was sold to River Horse Brewing out of New Jersey just last week or the week before. Um, it's weird calling Duclaw a legacy brand, but they have been around for like over a decade at this point. And I think we're going to see more of this is some younger breweries that are doing well. Well, River Horse isn't actually even a young brewery. They've been around for a long time, but we're going to see more of these brands buying legacy brands and kind of bringing them in house and seeing if they can themselves grow off of the name recognition of some of these legacy brands. I think that's what we're going to see a lot over the next few years, and then the strong will survive. Basically, the stuff's not going away forever. It's not even going to, I think, go away terribly. But there's going to be a lot of companies that close or are sold to other smaller companies for scraps, pretty much just like IP brand names. Maybe a brewery or brew pub if it's cheap enough in the deal. Because I'm sure that leases are involved in some of that stuff and overhead and all of that, employee retentions. So I think consolidation will be the next big thing in brewing.
I echo those sentiments a lot, and you mentioned a couple of things that I wasn't privy to, but you just see with the buying up of what we've seen with Canarchy and what we've seen with Sam Adams and Dogfish Head, people that know the craft space. And I think if I had to put my nickel down on the one big problem with big companies buying craft is they don't understand the market and they don't want to baby the market and put the attention that you have to do in the craft space. When you're building a portfolio of, when you're making Blue Moon and they're doing Blue Sky and they're doing a few different things here or there, but 90% of their product is coming out as Blue Moon. They're selling one brand. They're promoting it 100% in all the ballparks and things of that nature. That's not the way craft got over, so to speak, with the fans. You've got to do more brands more often. It's a more fickle customer. It's a more fickle market. It's more what have you done for me lately? And even on the retail side of things, even in the bars asking for, still, I have chain accounts still saying, well, I'm trying to put a rotating line in. What can you do for me seasonally? And most of my accounts don't want that anymore. But there's still people asking for that stuff, and they have that "what have you done for me lately" mentality, and it's just a completely different way of doing business than what the big boys are used to. So people that know craft and know what's been successful in the past, even if one of their brands has died on the vine, even if you got a brand like Fat Tire, which is now a blonde ale, they've been successful in the past. We know they make good beer. So if you've got different brands to promote, and we've seen this perfectly, and you've mentioned this before with New Belgium, with the whole the Voodoo series, like they've pivoted in a way that is super impressive to build an entirely different portfolio almost within their own brewery. So if you have a Dogfish Head or Sam Adams that can bring in other brands and then promote them in a different way, it could be really, really successful. But you are seeing attrition with many other breweries. We saw Ellipsis close in Orlando, and listen, they were never a massive brewery as far as barrelage production, but as far as street cred and smoothie sours and people freaking out over their stuff and getting crazy ratings on Untapped, pretty popular. I went there for multiple events and really liked their whole team. They were really good people, always treated us really well. And they've moved on to something else, right? It wasn't profitable for them, at least in some way, shape, or form. I don't know extenuating circumstances. Someone could have died in the family. I'm not trying to project. Maybe I don't know the whole story, but I can imagine that it's just hard to make a buck in this industry.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot of brewery owners who overestimated things and just thought, "Hey, I'm gonna make a brewery, and then we're gonna scale up like that guy over there did, and then we're gonna be selling to everywhere, all over the state, and then the region, and then who knows, maybe it's kind of funny. You said earlier how many brewery owners had like the plan to get big and sell out. And there were certainly a lot of those. And then there were others who were like, I'm gonna get big. And then what? I don't know. Just be big. Like it's like they didn't plan for how that growth was going to happen and what to do once you get there. Because once you get big, you have to maintain or keep growing. And we saw that with some of these breweries that were acquired is they did not even maintain.
I'm a big fan of the Kids in the Hall. I'm a big fan of sketch comedy from like the 90s and even like Monty Python going back. And there is a sketch that I believe happened, either that or it was a fever dream and I made it up in my mind. But it was they were doing like a presentation, like kind of like a scammy like pyramid scheme kind of thing. And the one guy writes on the board and said, "What if you had $100?" And he writes 100. He's like, "And what if I just added another one to the other end?" And it's like, "Oh, now you have $1,000. Now wait a second. What if I added one more zero? That's $10,000. That's a lot of money. But hold on one second. I'll do one more zero. That's $100,000, ladies and gentlemen." I believe that is that was the plan for pretty much every brewery owner I've ever spoken to with their brewery. Like, well, we'll just do more. Well, where are you going to sell it to? We're going to do more. Well, what's your distribution network? What are your salespeople going to do? What grocery store chain are you talking to? No, we're just going to do more. We're just going to make more money and make more beer, and then we'll put the 100-barrel fermenters here. Well, we got a 20-barrel brew house, but we've spaced it so that we can put 700-barrel tanks for when the expansion gets there. It's okay. That's good.
The big yellow one is the sun.
Yeah. It's just I feel that so strongly, and still to this, I talk to people on a regular basis telling me about the breweries are opening up, and some good concepts out there, but man, it's so competitive, and when you see all these little things happening on the periphery, and then the big things happening, it makes you really pause and wonder: wait, am I in the middle of a Ponzi scheme? Is is anyone actually making any money here? Or is this all like run by big grain? Like they were like, man, we got to get rid of all this barley. What if we convince a bunch of morons in the U.S. to open up craft breweries and then we can sell them all this grain? This will be wonderful.
And then they called their friends over at Hop Farms and were like, hey, you guys start growing more hops. Make new weird ones. Hell, you could maybe even say that Cascade is something called Citra, for example.
Listen. I know you're gonna run out of names. Use numbers. No one's gonna care. Just call the hops numbers. Don't worry about it. No big deal. We'll get with our friends over at the magazines and we'll start telling people how popular Italian Pilsners are. I mean, they're not, but we'll start telling people that. And then people will start drinking them and people will enjoy them. I got an email from one of my partners at the brewery, Bill, and it was from one beer publication, or maybe it could have been from BSG, I don't know, but it was saying, is Belgian Pilsner the next big thing? And I said, well, I can answer that question. It's no, but let me read farther into this article, and it didn't give any reason why Belgian Pilsner would be the next big thing. It gave no example of anyone selling a lot of Belgian Pilsner. It was essentially like, here, buy some of this malt and you can make a Belgian Pilsner.
I was going to say, was that either A, underwritten by someone from Stella Artois or someone from a grain?
I think it was directly written by someone from a person that sells grain and supplies to brew beer. So But that just seems to be prevalent.
Are Brooklyn Pilsners the next big thing? Because I can sell you some.
We'll just make. I mean, listen, we made up cold IPA and called that a thing when it doesn't exist. We made up a lager ale. Why can't we do this?
Next, we'll do clear stouts, but we have made white stouts. So, but yeah, I want to go back to some of these brands that were or breweries that were sold back to their original owners or whatever. I've heard.
You sound skeptical, Mike.
I am slightly skeptical because I've heard some people talk about like, I don't think that that's how it actually happened. Even worse in this is when I talked to someone about the Funky Buddha thing. Their reply about that was good for them. I'm like, how is that good for them? They just lost their $1 billion baby daddy. Like, their sales are down. It's an interesting spin to put on things, and I mean, I'm happy to a certain extent, but it's scary. Like, nonetheless, when you just read into it, like, that's a scary thing to be like. Parent company says you guys aren't worth having around anymore. Original owners, you wanna buy it back? Okay, here you go. Good fucking luck. Like, I mean, that almost means like these companies are in a very make it or break it situation. That they're going to have to fix the issues that they are having and get stabilized financially probably pretty quickly with owners who are not billionaires and can't just pump money into a product that isn't working. So they're going to have to probably pivot very quickly on some things and probably are going to cut staff. I don't know.
I think that that meant looking at this business as a business and not as a PR person, right, is really, really, from my point of view, really important. I have heard this, what you heard of good for them, I've heard tons of times because I have a lot of friends that love craft beer. They're in the periphery of the craft beer they're not in the business, but they love to drink it. And I know people that live right across the street from Funky Buddha Brewery, and it's their favorite brewery. And I've heard nothing but great things about this from them. To them, they're getting their brand back. It's not owned by the evil overlords anymore, and it's going to be back to being Funky Buddha, even though it probably didn't change that much in the first place. And the beer that's been getting kicked out of Oakland Park is probably not going to be much different because it's already getting kicked out of Oakland Park, right? You know, it's not going to change a lot, but the infrastructure has to. And I don't know if you've talked to any of, you know, I know you have, like me, we have friends that work there. I don't know if you talked to any of them about what's going on with their positions, but they're going to have to restructure for sure. But who knows? And now I'm really speculating, and I don't have any inside information on this, but listen, if things aren't working out in the greater market, you've got a giant brewery that can produce plenty of beer for Florida. You go back to serving your home market in 2 or 3 other markets where your beer is freaking killing it, and cut the fat and stop trying to push the beer down people's throats that don't want it. You can let those people go, whether they were Constellation brand reps or they were Funky Buddha brand reps. I have to believe they were Constellation reps. They weren't necessarily just for Funky if they were selling beer in Montana. And there's definitely a way forward where they can make money and be successful. But, we don't know. And we'll see. In a few years or a few months, we'll see how things kind of flesh out. But I, like you, Mike, when I saw that, I didn't immediately think, wow, this is going to be great news for everybody at that company. Even the owners, I thought, ooh, there's some rough days ahead, because you don't just flip off that switch of that kind of backing of a Super Bowl commercial. I mean, of the money that was, promotions for the Florida Panthers and the kind of advertising that was done through Constellation. You don't just flip that off and everything's hunky dory.
Yeah, and I should state that I am not talking specifically just about Funky Buddha, but about all of the brands that were cut by or sold by back to ownerships. Like that goes for Appalachian Mountain, that goes for Four Corners. Like these are going to be tough moments, and they're a great feel good story with that kind of headline to put it. It seems like they've been put as they beat the big guy and they reacquire the brand that they love so much, and awesome. Like if that does like give them a little bit of a pop in sales and service in their tap room and across their footprint, and awesome, good for them. But yeah, now comes the time to fix the holes and make the ship float. And I hope that those companies are able to do that. But I know that it's going to be an uphill battle, and I wish them nothing but luck in that.
Yeah, and specifically, and we always talk about this, whether you like a brand or you don't like a brand, or you hate macro beers and don't support anything AB InBev does or whatever, there are people that work at all of those plants. Mm-hmm. And they aren't necessarily shareholders. They don't make the decisions. These are just people that make their living wage from these places. So when you say, I'm no longer going to support this brand anymore, what you're really saying is I'm not going to give them money to pay their employees. And I do that all the time. We talked about this in like the Beer as Activism show. That's everyone's own prerogative. But if we shouldn't be taking any kind of personal joy in the struggling of another company. When another brewery goes down, it means that there's less jobs in the industry for people like Mike and myself, and for many of the people that listen to this show. So we want Funky to survive, not just because we know Ryan and Casey and want them to be successful, and we have some kind of care about a brand that we kind of watched grow up, but also for all the people I met that when I walked through and did a tour, all the super nice people in the lab and all the great conversations I had, I want them people to have jobs and to be able to support their families.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that said, we mentioned a little bit of you asked me what I see coming down the road. Do I think that there would be a peak again for craft? What about you?
This is going to sound repetitive, like I'm just copying your answer, but I have long been saying that the consolidation aspect is going to be the next step. We're going to see that's going to be acquisitions are going to be consolidation with craft brands because they know how to work in craft spaces. I do think there's going to be a real breaking point for most, and I'm not treading any new ground here. They talk about this in every single article you read online about the reckoning coming in the beer industry and how everyone's going to go out of business and it's going to be fire and death everywhere. I see that happening. I see a lot of smaller breweries that just got started not being ready to get off the ground. I see a lot of mid-level breweries that we've all assumed are doing really, really well. The owner's finally turning around and going, yeah, we haven't made money in 7 years, so we're going to close this thing down because we no longer have the light at the end of the tunnel. Bud's never going to come knocking on the door to buy us. So, keeping the books looking pretty isn't the biggest thing anymore. It's going to be actually whether we can make money. And if you can't, then I think a lot of people are going to pack it in. I think that the climate of healthier alcoholic drinks, and I do that with air quotes because it's still alcohol, but healthier alcoholic drinks are pushing the craft beer market pretty hard, and we're getting the people that are conscious about what they're drinking and flavor are often the same people that are conscious about what they're drinking for health. There's a lot of overlap, and probably more than in macro beers. So I think we're getting pushed out a lot there, and I think that trend is going to continue. I think the NAs are going to be a thing. I don't think it's going to be Zima and just die tomorrow. So I think the next 10 years are going to be really, really rough. And then there's going to be a new boom. It's going to be another big bang, and a bunch of new breweries are going to sprout up, and they're going to be doing something else with ingredients that I don't like and that I don't appreciate and I don't think is real beer. And that's going to get really, really popular. And I'm going to be an even older cranky man, shaking my fist at a cloud. But at that point, I think there'll be another expansion, and we'll see this happen all over again. Predictions.
I give you credit for being kind of positive in there and thinking that that's going to happen. I'm the pessimist in the group, I guess, and don't think that we'll hit that again.
You think that you'll be telling your grandchildren, you'll be sitting on a rocking chair on a front patio, and you'll be describing to them, when I was young, they had this thing called craft beer, and it wasn't these alcohol pills that you kids are all having these days. That's your position.
There was a day when the two words "high ally" were a beer and a sport, and now neither exists anymore.
If I were to say to you, "Hi, ally," you'd say, "Grandpa, stop talking gibberish." But for me, there was a great beer by a place called Cigar City Brewing. Yeah, it might happen. Who knows?
Yeah.
No, go ahead, please. I had nothing.
I had nothing either. So
professionalism is off the charts.
Yeah. So I like that we end this kind of car crash like just like the market. So perfect. Makes total sense. It's like we planned it.
Not only is craft beer going down and dead, but our podcast is, and this is the Death Throes. It is us just speaking gibberish and not knowing what to say next. And by the way, I do plan to be doing United We Drink in 10 to 20 years when we are just cranky old men. I don't think many people will come along with us because I don't see us getting any nicer.
Yeah, I'll probably be drinking a little wine and some whiskey and be talking about I don't know, my kids' recitals or something like that. But we'll keep the name because the name means everything. It's brand recognition.
It's branding. No, we'll just be talking about people in the neighborhood we don't like. Like, have you seen this guy Steve? The guy that always mows his lawn on Sunday morning. This guy Steve, freaking Steve.
All right, so let's move on then to last calls, the time in the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want, beer related, not beer related. This is unopposed, unobjected, uninterrupted time. Kevin, go ahead and start things off.
So I've been going down a rabbit hole recently with a Mr. James Randi. Mike, are you familiar with James Randi?
Yes. Okay.
I know you're not supposed to talk in this, but I just needed somebody to give me some validation because pretty much nobody else probably has. But anyway, it's about James Randi was a magician and a skeptic that ran the James Randi Educational Foundation in Florida. He had the $1 Million Psychic Challenge, where he would actually take people like Uri Geller and other famous psychics or spiritualists or people that said they can do something magic, and he would put them under laboratory conditions and test them and say that if they could pass this, they would get $1 million. And he did this for years and years. Big hero of mine. He is one of the big heroes of Penn and Teller, and I mention Penn Jillette pretty much 7 times a day because he's my hero as well. So there's a lot of like crossover with this, and I love James Randi, and it's been a big influence in my life. He is passed now. He died a couple years ago, but I was going down a rabbit hole with his videos, his lectures online, with a lot of the appearances he had on Carson in the 70s. And I was just blown away about the balls of this guy to go and after faith healers and show them as charlatans and frauds And I mean, literally, like find their recordings of when they were having their wife tell them information about the people in the audience so they could seem like they were getting the word from God, and getting those recordings and playing them on Johnny Carson and calling Peter Popoff off for being the fraud that he was. And all the good work of scientific skepticism that people like himself have done, and Martin Gardner and just all these other people that most people don't know about. But if you're interested in science and skepticism, if you're interested in any of that stuff at all, if you're just interested in magic, because a lot of magicians tend to be scientific skeptics, check out James Randi. There's a great movie called The Honest Liar. We talked about his life. It's absolutely fascinating and all the work that he's done. And there's lots of videos up on YouTube. He's just a great guy. And I got a chance to meet him once at the amazing meeting out in Vegas. It was one of my favorite times of my life. So James Randi, I love you.
All right, so I wanted to talk very briefly. This is something that Kevin has actually mentioned in our last call before. I think he has started rewatching The Good Place, show that is, I think, one of Kevin's top 3 favorite shows, or top 2. His number 1. He's holding up the one finger. It is such a joy to go through that again because it's just such a well-written show, and well acted show. I mean, it's just amazing how they were able to just make good people, or even those who have flaws, be able to beat the things that held them down in life and improve upon themselves and go against what they were comfortable with to create the better good. It's amazing, and funny. Very. If you've watched The Good Place and enjoyed it, I recommend just go back and make it your like last show that you watch in the evening or something like that. If you haven't ever watched it and you enjoy just really witty, good, charming characters and comedy, go watch it. You'll do yourself a great favor by doing so.
May I say something about The Good Place?
Sure.
Greatest show of all time. Kind, funny, and just everything about that show is about transformation and getting better and treating people well and doing it with actual humor. It's not about punching down the entire time, other than when they make fun of Jason. But other than that, it's pretty much all on the level, punching up kind of stuff. So, yeah, it is next level brilliant.
Yeah. You want to plug anything, Kev?
We're going to have a collaboration beer, a West Coast IPA that we did with the Tank Brewing called Neon Skyline. That will be out very soon after this episode comes out. So I highly recommend. I'm really proud of the beer. I've tasted it in the tank. We haven't bottled it yet, so we haven't had it carbonated. But it's got bitterness. It's got a classic West Coast kind of flavor and body, and it is just absolutely delicious. So I highly recommend, if you are down in the area of South Florida, please come and check that out.
Very cool. I'm gonna have to try to get me some of that.
You know a guy.
This is not a plug, but when I was out in California, we went to Russian River, had lunch with some of my wife's friends, and they had on tap Blind Pig Inaugural Ale. Apparently, it is more along the lines of the original recipe of Blind Pig, and it's a double IPA with a big malt body to it, and I guess they use a little bit of wood chips to it as well. Holy crap, just so good. It's like a classic double IPA, and just a fantastic tasting beer. I just had to say that.
Good for you, man. I mean, I've been having like some really, really good classic West Coast double IPAs recently. I just had Maximus by Lagunitas, which was freaking delicious. And I get so, when we get so down a rabbit hole and we're talking about the negative aspects of our business and all that stuff, I know they might not be brands that are bringing in the bucks right now, but some of these brands that had to be killed over time because of, inattention and not having good sales are still so freaking good. Yeah. They're still so tasty. The fact that I won't be able to get Acre Porter when I just found out that it was available in my Total Wine recently again is going to make me very, very sad. I can't get Avery Maharaj anymore. That was a great beer. I can't even get Avery anything in South Florida. The list goes on. But
I had some Lagunitas IPA while I was out there, and it tasted fantastic.
I mean, we act as if like the taste buds of every human being just changes every 3 to 5 years, and that's just not the case. The attention changes. They start looking in a different direction, but the actual thing still tastes really, really good, and we forget about those, which is really sad.
Yeah. That should be like a tagline for your Old Favorite Fridays. Your taste buds don't change, your attention does.
I need. This is why I need you. This is why I need you to tell me the things I say aren't stupid. Every now and then I say something smart.
I just want to real quick plug, as I have been lately, my Substack, mikelovesbeer.com.substack.com, where I'm putting out a weekly newsletter talking about beer and some photography and just my feelings on what's going on in the industry. Really, just with it's ranting at points, but it's mine and I can do that. And if you have enjoyed hearing me rant on this show on Twitter in short form, go check that out and subscribe. It's free. Also, you can check out my Twitter and Instagram at Mike Loves Beer. You can follow the show on Twitter at United We Drink, on Instagram at United We Drink Pod. And as always, our website is unitedwedrink.com. We're on all of the major podcast services such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. And if you want to support the show financially, go to our website and check out the Brands We Love page. There's stuff like Liquid Death, who have an iced tea line out now that I fucking love. Really enjoy the Armless Palmer. It's an Arnold Palmer, but it has less calories and less sugar than like all of the other canned offerings for that. So I guess you could say it's healthier for you, but I think that it tastes fantastic. Lots of other stuff on there. If you buy through those links, you support this show. Other than that, we'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode. We'll see if it's going to be the NA one. That's one I really do want to talk about. So maybe we should do that one on the next episode. Until then, cheers.
Cheers.